with the latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, China's GDP grows by a stronger than expected 5.4% in the first quarter of the year. And the 5th China International Consumer Products Expo in Hainan showcases cutting-edge technologies. And now let's begin with our top story. China's GDP grew by 5.4% in the first quarter. An official from the National Bureau of Statistics said high U.S. tariffs may exert some pressure on China's foreign trade, but they will not change the long-term positive trend of the Chinese economy. He said China's economy has a solid foundation, strong resilience, and vast potential. The official said China is confident and capable of achieving its growth targets. China's aiming for a yearly GDP increase of around 5% for this year. So for more on this, join us on the line now, Li Lun, Assistant Professor of Economics at Peking University, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novia Market Technologies, and also Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University. So I will start with you. So how did China's economy perform overall in the first quarter? And how do you digest into this 5.4% GDP growth?
Well, so we see the first quarter has registered really strong growth at 5.4%, pretty continuing with the very solid progress in the last 3 months of last year. So it really beats the expectation. I think many of the polls show that the expectation was China's first quarter growth would be about 5.1%. So clearly this exceeds the expectation. So I think what is very important to look at the data is not just the growth rate, but also I think it's just a balance in terms of, on the one hand, you have really high industrial output growth by 6.5%. And again, when you look at some of these very important high-tech advanced manufacturing, you're seeing the new energy vehicles, the 3D printer, and also industrial robots. Those have really registered much higher growth, over 40% of growth or 26% for the industrial robots. So this is a continued theme that China is an industrial powerhouse, and its manufacturing sector is also being really rapidly upgraded and also improved. Then we're also seeing the retail sales. It has gone up by 4.6%, which is basically acceleration by about 1.1 percentage points from last year. So I think this is a good sign that these consumer trade-in program seem to be really helpful in boosting the growth in consumption in general, but also some specific, like telecommunication devices or household appliances, furniture, all this register, double digits, higher double digits growth. So I think all of these just shows that the supply side is improving and upgrading, and the demand side is also improving. And the fixed asset investment was up by 4.2%, which is also faster by about 1% than the last year's growth. And then one last thing I think is also interesting to see that the exports are actually also very strong. In the first quarter, export has gone up by 6.9%. However, I think import has gone down by 6%, and we can talk about why that's the case. But overall, I think the demand side seems to be continuing to really strong and help to boost economic growth. That said, we know that the tariff is, it's now really putting a lot of pressures on the export sector. So I think remains to be seen policy supports and also this continued very strong market fundamentals should help China to continue to grow this year.
And Professor Li Lun, so 5.4% growth in quarter one, despite the external pressures. So what factors contributed to this economic resilience?
Yeah, I think Professor Liang already said a lot. I think what I would really want to highlight is that the high value segment is really leading the way of this growth. For example, the information transmission software, IT services, they all having like double-digit growth, and we're also seeing, for example, in a growth in investment, especially in fixed investment in both manufacturing, in capital. So those are all very good signs that this growth is not, like a 1 quarter phenomenon. It's projected to prolong in the future. And besides that, I think the consumption front is very robust. Whether you're looking at total retail sales, whether you're looking at household disposable income, or when you're looking at unemployment rate, those are all giving very good signals about the overall, behavior of China's ecosystem and economy.
And Yan, so an official from the National Bureau of Statistics said that high U.S. tariffs cannot change the long-term positive trend of the Chinese economy. So how do you explain this outlook?
Well, I think this is I would say correct sort of description of China's economy. So this long-term trend, I think the strong sort of fundamentals in this long-term trend really is, I think, exhibited by, two important aspects. One is that China has a very large domestic market and it keeps growing. As a matter of fact, when you look at the household disposable income and also looking at consumption growth, it's very much, I would say, on par with the GDP growth. And so that, and the most recent data, as I just mentioned, when it comes to retail sales, it has been going up quite substantially, right? 4.6%, accelerated from last year. And also, I think in March, there has been even new sort of policy support for consumption was launched. So I think, with policy support and also with this general sort of trend towards more consumption, domestic consumption-driven growth, I think from the demand side, this is really the long-term potential, right? The large market that would really help the demand side to boost. From the supply side, I think, China has the most complete, mature, and the most comprehensive industrial supply chain with over 200, mature industry clusterings. So I think China remains to be a really sort of industrial powerhouse. And on top of that, we know with the AI revolution, with some of the emerging new technologies and industries are really taking, strong foothold in China, we're likely to see, not only just large scale of manufacturing production, but really the advanced, driven by technology, driven by productivity growth. So I think that is really what this market fundamental is about, both very strong supply side and also very solid demand side and increasing, growing. So that is, I think, really the positive outlook for China's economy in the long term.
So Jiahe, on consumption, how do you see the growth potential of China's consumption sector?
When we look at consumption, it's probably one of the most important, or probably the most important factor for China's economy to grow in the next many years. This is basically because of a few reasons. First of all, China's per capita GDP and the per capita income is rising every single year. I mean, if you look at the data published in the first quarter of this year, China's per capita income has been growing at almost 6%, excluding the pricing factor. So that's quite a lot of growth if you look at that. And when people are getting more money, they just tend to consume more. And the second is because China's consumption level compared with its overall GDP is actually at a lower level compared with developed economies. This means when China's economy is growing to become a developed economy in the next few decades, then it's quite possible that the consumption, the percentage of the consumption in the overall economy will be rising as well. And another very important reason is that China's consumption market is a united large market. I mean, it's probably the largest market in the world if you count it with how many consumers are there, because currently we've got 1.4 billion consumers. I mean, that's a market that's only comparable by India if you count the population, but India's per capita GDP is much lower compared with China. So at this moment, this is a very important consumption market, and it's with this ability is actually supporting the growth of China's economy.
So, Professor Li Lun, in consumption market, we have already seen a lot of benefits from the trade-in policies. So what do you expect in terms of how policymakers will further support the domestic consumption for this year?
Yeah, so we have already seen that the policymakers have introduced a 30-point special action plan, which basically focused on boosting income and expanding, for example, childcare subsidies, and also encouraging flexible employment, supporting elderly care, and so on. So I think together with the trade-in subsidy, we're seeing that the policy is actually being very effective in boosting the domestic consumption, and I think this gives the policymaker more confidence in terms of, imposing more stimulus plans to boost other consumption. For example, a lot of scholars are promoting to expand these subsidies to service sector as well. So basically, if you buy a product, you only buy it once, but if you buy a service, it can potentially be repeated purchase and can give a higher stimulus to the economy. So for example, services like tourism, cultural events, like going to the restaurants, these can be becoming recurring spending patterns and can help to rebalance consumption, because you can't trade in your product or your TV like all year long, right? You can only do it once. And in addition, I think other policies that can boost domestic demand can include, for example, tax incentive or credit support, which can be good for domestic consumption.
And yeah, so let's look at the China's foreign trade. The exports surged by nearly 7%, while imports fell by 6% in the first quarter. So how would you interpret this?
Well, I think this is the period, the first quarter of 2025, is the time when Trump imposed 2 rounds of 20% of tariff on China. That didn't seem to really create a big dent in China's export growth and its export performance. And I think that just shows, mainly two things. One is that China's export competitiveness, right, it's very unparalleled. So even if countries, like the United States is trying to, in some ways, reduce China's exports, China is still able to diversify its export destinations and, sell its products to the vast global South countries, BRI countries, which have a lot more importance when it comes to export trade partner than the United States. After all, U.S. only accounts for about 14.7% of China's exports. So this kinds of tariff would create some, I would say, some difficulties and challenges, but it's not going to, sort of really undermine China's export competitiveness by a whole lot. And second, I think it's, again, not only that we see China's export growth has gone up, but importantly, we're also seeing the continued improvement in China's industrial, the export in terms of the quality, right, the export structure. So when you look at the electrical product exports, that has gone up by 8.7% in the first quarter. So it's higher than the general export. So that means not only China have more trading partners, but its products are also very competitive, and it's also very well received by the global market. So I think that will continue to help China to export. Now we know the U.S. tariff now is a lot more higher on China, right? 142%. And lately, there are some categories of products now are 245% tariff, which, at this stage, it really doesn't matter how much higher the tariff rate is. But the point is, I think, again, China will continue to work with other regional partners and also international trade partners and continue to diversify its export destinations, continue to improve its, product in terms of competitiveness. So I think this will help China weather well this kind of tariff rate. But I also agree with Chen Jiahe talked about, the domestic market is still going to be the largest source of demand. The import decline, it's a little bit concerning to me, but I think it's probably because, because Chinese made products have become so competitive and attractive. So a lot of the consumers switch from buying imports to buying domestic brands, right? When it comes to smartphones, automobiles, and so on and so forth. So that may contribute to this decline in the imports. But I think in today's global economy, China, as the largest, one of the largest economies, one of the largest consumer markets, I think China can do a lot more in boosting import. That is not only good for Chinese people's own, living standards and well-being, but I think it would also help to ease a lot of the tensions and anxieties of some of the more export-oriented, smaller economies. And so I think that would help to continue to boost global trade and enhance the kind of cooperativeness in the global trading system.
And so, China's industrial output in March rose by 7.7%. So from the perspective of industrial restructuring and upgrading, what long-term impact could the growth in equipment manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing have on China's overall industrial landscape?
Well, I think this is a great question. I think so with a lot of these advanced manufacturing that is driven by, technologies, I think on the one hand, what that means is that it really helped to improve the production process, right? So in terms of enhancing efficiency, reduces waste, improve the quality of the products. So we're likely to see more quality growth when it comes to industrial output growth. So that is, from the supply side, using technology, using, AI, using, 5G, using a lot of these smart manufacturing, it really helped to boost efficiency. So I think that is, from the supply side. On the other hand, I think with all these high-tech products, with all these new vehicles, the 3Ds, industrial robots and humanoid robots, and many other smart devices, home devices or personal devices. I think this also helped to provide quality consumer goods to the market. And so that helped to also improve the demand side. So overall, I think, going to the long term, this is very important for the quality productive forces. It's very important to drive the economic growth, through innovations, through productivity growth. So that really, I think it's the key to continue to grow the economy and allow China to graduate out of the so-called middle income trap. So to rely on the productivity growth. And then I also think that the demand side, right, help should not be underestimated as well.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Architechnologies, and also Li Lun, Assistant Professor of Economics at Peking University. And after a short break, we'll take a look at the Hainan Expo showcases cutting-edge technologies. Stay with us.
Welcome. I'm Elaf Elad, economics professor and member of the Data Science and AI Center at New York University, Shanghai. On the World Today program, you can find in-depth and impartial insight, as well as critical commentary on key trends in the Chinese economy, financial technology, business, and blockchain. To prepare for the world tomorrow, join me on World Today.
You are listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. As global trade comes under increasing uncertainty and volatility, China once again signals its vast market is open for business. The 5th China International Consumer Product Expo was recently held in Haikou, South China's Hainan province. This year, the expo features an expanded lineup of more than 700 exhibitors from over 70 countries and regions. As China's only national-level exhibition focused on consumer goods, this year's edition emphasized innovation and global collaboration. Song Ruixing has filed a report from Hainan.
At this year's Hainan Expo, a clear trend is emerging: healthy and smart consumption. The integration of technology and sustainability into daily life is striking. So these innovations not only highlight advances in design and function, but also reflect a growing consumer preference for well-being and environmental responsibility. International brands are also adapting. Localization is the key, as they can't expect to be sitting on the other side of the world and just expecting people to know who they are. On the tech front, cutting-edge tech is transforming how we refuel and recharge. For example, at Visited Sinopec's booth, visitors can explore AI digital assistant, that is a fourth-generation fueling robot that completes a fill-up in under 2 minutes, and a mobile EV charging robot, highlighting the future of intelligent unmanned service stations. So altogether, these developments showcase how innovation is driving a shift in consumer lifestyles, smarter, greener, and more connected than ever before.
So first, Li Lun, what are the highlights of this year's China International Consumers Products Expo? And what is driving this very strong international interest in the Expo?
So this year, I think, as you mentioned, there's a record number of brands of participating countries. You mentioned there's 4,100 brands from 71 countries, and actually 65 of them are Fortune 500 companies. And there, for the first time, we're seeing dedicated zones that's spotlighting artificial intelligent products, humanoid robots, low altitude flyers, and also very novel innovations like brain computer interfaces and external skeletons which can help the elderly walk and so on. And we're also seeing countries having their national pavilions, such as from Brazil and Singapore. So this year, I think the highlight is mainly in the new products, in the new variety that's previously unseen, whether it's the robot, whether it's the high-tech skeleton. So these new products are showing both the domestic consumers as well as visitors from abroad basically the new patterns for consumption as well as the new innovations.
And Jiahe, so how is the rapidly advancing technology impacting the consumer market right now?
Currently, technology is one of the very important drivers for the consumption products in China. I mean, basically, if you look at consumption, if bread, beer, these kind of things, they don't really change over time. So the increments of the consumption really don't come from these traditional factors, because they are just the same over 10 years, 20 years, or even 50 years. So they don't change a lot. So if you want an increment of the consumption, you're talking about technology, the latest technology. And this technology can be applied to many sectors. The home appliances, basically everything that uses electricity, is really be able to offer you much better consumption experience and consumption product. With most products, especially the products that everything that's using electricity, the electrical cars, TVs, computers, mobile phones, everything. You see the technology improving every time, and people get better and better experience with their consumption.
And so China aims to highlight its cutting-edge technology sectors like AI, like low-altitude economy to drive the global consumption trends. So tell us more about that. What's the opportunities there, and how does AI technology develop here in China, and how could they help the consumption?
Well, I think AI is really an all-purpose technology. So when it's applied in the industrial sector, it helps to, boost industrial productivity. When it comes to when it applied to the consumer market, then I agree with what Jiahe was saying. It not only helped to transform the traditional kind of products, right, like smartphones, like air conditioners, but it also really create new lines of products like humanoid robots that people can actually now purchase and do housework, take care of the elderly, and so on and so forth. And also, AR goggles and so on and so forth. And you also mentioned the low altitude economy. And this is the next really emerging, industries that can help with the industry sector, right, to provide more, transportation, logistics. But it could also be applied to the consumption sector when it comes to, service consumption, such as tourism, and also commute, and so on and so forth. So I think these technologies just has the vast potential to expand the consumer markets when it comes to both goods, but also services. But it's also really helped to upgrade the consumer experiences, right? All the, great products, the high level, high quality services people can enjoy. So I think it's both a quantitative expansion when it comes to consumption, but it's also a qualitative improvements of people's consumption experiences. Also when it comes to the wellness sector, you also see a lot of tech being applied to the sector. I think, Professor Li just mentioned some of the, robots could help to do certain massage or to detect any sort of illnesses using the AI system and so on and so forth. So I think just the general trend is that, with the technology, we're likely to see the expansion and also improvement in the quality of China's consumer markets.
And with the advancements in technology, Yan, so what new consumption models do you believe are emerging in China? And how might this reshape the consumer behavior in the coming years?
Right. Well, I think the way technology is going to be really very much deeply integrated in the consumer experiences. So from the product that you enjoy, smart home appliances, personal devices, wellness products, all these are going to really transform the consumers' experiences. But also when it comes to the service consumption. So we know, in China now we're boosting, consumption demand. But I don't think we should focus too much on the goods consumption because that could create a lot of environmental degradations and disasters. But I think the service consumption, to me, is really the next generation, I would say, consumer market. Not only because it's more environmental friendly, but it really helps to enhance people's life experiences. So when it comes to childcare, elderly care, tourism, virtual experiences, you name it. So I think, to deliver a lot of these service consumption products, we need the technologies. So I'm right now traveling in Beijing. I just order, with my app a, food delivery item, and couple minutes later, 10 minutes later, there's a robot, right, standing in front of the room and to deliver this product. So I think again, this is a great consumer experiences. I think for the vast Chinese consumers, is that enhanced quality of consumption, especially in the service sector. And I think that again, technology plays a indispensable role in pushing forward this kind of new kind of consumption experience and consumption sort of frontier.
Well, we're speaking with Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, Li Lun, Assistant Professor of Economics at Peking University, and also Chen Jiahe, Chief Investment Officer at Novum Technologies. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yang in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening.